Honored to get to talk to you today.
The high school radio or college radio? I forgot.
It's a high school. Yeah.
That's killer. Good. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess just hop right into it. Recently, kind of fellow DC hardcore band, and I believe friends of yours, if I'm right, Bad Brains, were nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I'm wondering if they were the first. I mean, according to people who don't count the Beastie Boys, they're the first hardcore punk band to be nominated, which kind of opens the door for bands like Minor Threat to kind of be nominated in coming years. Have you ever kind of thought about how you would react if you were nominated for that?
No, because it's absurd. I wouldn't even think about it. I don't think we ever will be, and if we were, it wouldn't matter, because it'd be like, for me, it'd be like being awarded for, or like nominated for like a tire company. I mean, I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame largely is. I mean, I don't question the veracity or validity of their operation. It just doesn't have much to do with me. They're different. It's a different world, and I mean, I think the Bad Brains, for them, it's important. I don't think it's. I think, like, for me, I just don't. I mean, it wasn't that I wanted to destroy rock and roll, like, or the rock and roll industry. I just wanted to have. I just wanted to do our own thing. I didn't want to be part of it. So, being offered an award by an organization that I feel so little affinity for, probably would not hold. Wouldn't hold much value for me. Imagine, for instance, if you were, someone called you and said that you're being awarded by the National Drinking Straw Association.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, what? That's not what that's, I mean, obviously, if someone...
I've used straws before, but...
Right, well, here's my thought about that. I think that there's two things that probably... One of two things are probably at play with this particular situation with the Bad Brains. One is that there's somebody within the organization of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame who is a visionary and believes that the bands that really have really inspired people on a roots level should also be acknowledged, as opposed to just the ones who are, well known because they were commercial successes. So a band like the Bad Brains had an absolutely enormous cultural impact on many of us. and those of us who are impacted by them, I think it's fair to say impacted other people. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is hoping to establish some sense of credibility, and by naming bands or by involving bands who actually are these sort of much lesser known but have a lot of street credibility, maybe that would bring more credibility to their operation. That's a possibility. I'm not trying to be cynical. It's just a possibility. I think for the Bad Brains, it's important. I think for them, my sense is that for them it's important because that's sort of been their central mission as a band, like their whole lives. I mean, I first saw the Bad Brains in 1979, and they were basically young adults. I think that Daryl was probably 19 when I first saw them, and it's still this sort of a central thing in their lives. And so this kind of, should they win, which is, I don't know, I have no idea when the election.
Yeah, I think that, that already happened. Neither Bad Brains nor MC5 got in, no.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Whatever, I mean, but I guess the nomination is important for them, and it got them some exposure, and that's fine. That's good. I'm not mad about it. It just doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. Do you still talk with those guys? Do you still?
No, not really. I mean, I know I've over the years, I've seen HR quite a few times, but HR is very hard
how's he doing? How's he doing? Isn't he?
He's stabilized.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, HR is somebody who, as a young man, I spoke with a lot, and he was an incredibly vibrant and, again, a real visionary guy with millions of ideas, and just so he's interested and interesting. And in recent years, probably the last 15 or 20 years even, I'm happy to see him, if only because, means he's still alive, which is nice. But we don't really, it's not much to talk about because he doesn't really talk. He has always just pleasantries, like, hey, how are you? I'm fine. Well, how have you been doing? Great. Are you making music? It's great. There's nothing. It's just where he's at. And so I can't say I don't really talk to him. I've not seen Gary in years, or Earl, but Daryl and I have had a few. We've been sort of in and out of touch over a little while. But nothing. But no, I would say I'm regularly in contact. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So kind of moving on, completely different to a completely different subject. Are you at all involved in the DC scene these days? And do you, how do
you find that?
Do you get out to shows? Do you both watching bands and with the Evens very often and stuff like that?
The Evens we haven't been playing over the last few years, but we've been working on this new project that's slowly coming together. We're in no real hurry, but we're working on new music with somebody on bass. We're doing it's a slightly modified. I'm not playing the baritone. It's a different kind of arrangement, but it may or may not end up being a band. I don't know. We just enjoy playing. We practiced this morning. We practice pretty much every morning. In terms of the scene, it's very hard for me to I don't know what the scene is, so I don't know how to
just
say
it.
Shows
and stuff.
I go to shows occasionally. I don't go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shows here. A lot. So, any given night, there's probably one or two gigs going on that there's some connection to that I could go to. I don't go to all those shows. Partially because it would be impossible, just in terms of logistically getting out there. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'd just as soon, he's not going to live in my house forever. I like the groove, but also my ears are, they're shot, so I have tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. That's constant, and so if I go see a show, I'm not scared about going to shows, but I'm just not going to go stand around at a gig unless there's a reason. I'm not just going to make the scene. But I'll go out. I'm going to see some bands tonight, and I'll probably go out to. It probably averages a a show every week or two. Yeah, I go to a lot. I mean, I've been to so many shows. I honestly can't remember how many shows I've been to, obviously. But there's a lot of, like, for instance, there's a really vibrant underground sort of punk hardcore scene here in town that I don't really go to a lot of those shows. Not out of, they're great people and they're nice and all that. It's nothing like that. It's just that, in a way, I feel like I'm almost a distraction because I'm so recognized and
Yeah.
so
Kind of along those lines. This is a very weird personal question, but I was in DC last summer, and I could have sworn that I saw you at a flag show at the Black Cat. Is that correct, or are you aware of Flag?
Of who?
Flag.
Am I aware of the band?
Yeah.
I mean, I know those guys very well. Yeah, I know them. I mean, of course. I roadied for Black Flag in 1981, so I know. And I'm close friends with Chuck, the bass player, and yeah, I was there. I was at the gig.
Oh, nice.
I've seen them.
So that was you. Yeah. And are you still like? I know he's not in Flag, but are you still kind of in contact with Henry Rollins? Do you guys ever hang out these days?
My best friend. Henry's my best friend. I've been friends with Henry since I was 11 years old. We're still best friends. Like, we talk with each other. We're in constant contact.
That's cool. I'm sure you've heard Henry stand up where he talks about like the stuff you guys used to do as kids, and he has like the stories about those about you guys like the rat poison and the ice cream and stuff like that. Do you have any
Not only have I heard
stories
it,
about?
I actually did it.
Yes,
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. But that's how I heard about it, I guess. Do you have any stories about Rollins like that? Like kind of just, fun stories about Rollins when you guys were kids, kind of in that vein?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I have hundreds.
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of on the spot.
Henry and I were pretty inseparable.
Yeah.
I met him when I was 11, and then I went away. My dad had a thing we had to do. He had a fellowship at a college. We moved out of town for some months. And when I first met Henry, my recollection at this point now is that I lived in a neighborhood. We both lived in a neighborhood called Glover Park. He lived sort of down at the bottom of the neighborhood, the bottom of the hill, and I knew the kids in the neighborhood, and they said, "Oh, there's this new kid living down W Street, and he's got a BB gun." And we're like, "Whoa!" Like no way. So we went down and said, "Oh yeah, he's got a snake and a BB gun." So we went down and knocked on the door, and this kid answered the door. And we're like, "We heard you got a BB gun." He's like, "Yeah." Until we went and started. We just go to his basement, and he had a really he had this little setup. He took a cigar box and cut slots in it, and he put poker chips in there, and then he had a big thick foam, kind of like hard foam board against the wall behind it, and we would just target shoot the poker chips with his BB gun. Just listen to Aerosmith and Cheech and Chong and on the stereo, and that's how we get to know each other. And then when I was out of town, my friends fell afoul of Henry. They got into some scrap. So when I got back, he was out to beat their ass. I was 13 years old. I remember I got back and they were like, "Oh, this guy, we got that guy. He's mad at us." And I was like, and so then, because by association, he was mad with me. And then, so anytime we see Henry, just run. Just run. He was so burly, and I remember he actually caught me one time and threw me against a wall, and I said, I wasn't even living here. I'm not a part of this. And he's like, "Your friends are stupid," But we really reconnected through skateboarding. My friends and I, we started skateboarding, and we built ramps. We were building ramps, and he just was one day Henry rode by on a skateboard, and we thought, "Oh, that guy's on a skateboard now." And he came over and said, "That's kind of cool." And he said, "Can I ride it?" And then we just fell back together and pretty much inseparable after that. I mean, he moved to L.A. when he was 19 years old to be in Black Flag. I drove him to the Greyhound station, and I packed him up. I brought his stuff to Dischord house, or to my house. Well, actually, I still lived at home. I think of it. I brought all of his stuff. He had nowhere to put his stuff, so I took it all. and then took him to the Greyhound station. And I mean, he left with like a change of clothes and some and like a notebook. That's all he had. And but we've always stayed in touch. He's as I said, I love the guy. He's my best friend.
That's awesome. Yeah. So are you kind of, I guess, back to the current state of hardcore? Are you aware of the band Gloss? Or GLOSS?
GLOSS?
Yeah.
G?
Yes.
Where are they from?
Olympia.
I don't think I've heard them.
Yeah. So they kind of came in. I mean, not like the news, but they kind of made some headlines when this past fall they turned down a record deal from Epitaph because Epitaph is owned by some big corporation or something, and then a week later there was they announced that they were breaking up, and there weren't many details on that, but a lot of people kind of came to take it that they had broken up because it was something to do with that whole Epitaph thing. And so afterwards, in the aftermath of that, a lot of people were describing it as kind of Gloss living by the Fugazi code. I'm not making that term up. Have you heard of the term Fugazi code?
No, but I mean, I've certainly heard over the years people saying like, well, you're Fugazi, you can do that, we can't. But I don't know Gloss. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know nothing about this Epitaph thing. I'm totally unaware of this whole story. I knew nothing about it. What I can say is it's probably one of the reasons, like they probably didn't agree with each other. They weren't getting along.
Yeah, and they didn't make like a press statement.
Right, so there's probably some people in the band who maybe thought, we'd like to do something with Epitaph, and other people were like, we don't want to. And so they weren't getting along. That's
what most people inferred from that whole thing.
There are people navigating, probably kids just navigating circumstances, and I think that I'm irritated by the notion that Fugazi, like people have sort of isolated us and saying, well, Fugazi can do that, but we can't. And it's ironic because the whole point of the work that I've done with Dischord and Minor Threat and Fugazi is I mean, I didn't go to I never went to college. I've never had a manager. I don't have a lawyer. I don't really have any advisors. So my point was always like, hey, this is like, if I can do this, it's doable. Like that's how I look at it. It's possible. That's all we want to say. It's like, it's possible. But then people turned into like this sort of thing like, well, those guys can do it, nobody else can do it. And was not the intention. I didn't want to become a token.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at, there are other bands definitely out. I mean, not anymore, but like Bound in the Music Industry is an example. They kind of had a similar thing, and at the end they were all like good friends when they kind of broke up. But it was just that the lifestyle that they had to kind of managing everything, it just wasn't doable for them. Do you think it's possible to have like a sustainable band under this? I guess. Like under the the way that Fugazi operated, because I guess what you see.
No, I know it. I don't think it. I know it.
Okay. Yeah, because when you guys,
what does that mean, sustainable though? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when you guys went on hiatus, I mean, I guess the impression that I got from that was that it was basically like you guys were all like good with each other, but you, I don't know. I guess touring like that and having crowds come out, like when you have like a big enough following and you're trying to kind of just play shows around the country with $5 admission and everything, it's kind of hard. I mean, at a certain point, does that become impossible to organize, or was it just you guys figured you'd done what you were going to do? I guess that was just the impression I got.
I would reframe the whole thing. I would.
Okay.
I think that my sense is.
Maybe I didn't read that.
Yeah, I think I would reframe
correctly.
it by saying that the band, like, for 15 years, which is a long time, right?
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm not.
Hear me out.
That's definitely impressive. Yeah.
Hear me out. The four of us made Fugazi, the band, the central part of our lives. Like, everything we did basically was around the band for 15 years. And at some point in our lives, other things were going on. People, were coming and going. People were dying and being born. And the way we were working, the way we had become accustomed to working, was not really feasible in terms of dealing with things that we had put off all those years while we were working on the band. Do I think that it suggests that what we were doing was unsustainable? No, I don't think that. I think it was sustainable for as long as it needed to be done. But it's not. Fugazi was not a career. We weren't a business. It wasn't as if we were opening a business and now we had to close our doors. We were actually a creative, we were a creative family. And part of the creativity that we engage in is maybe making music or putting on shows or playing gigs or being creative in the way we navigate the business environment, or maybe our creativity has to do with what we do not on the stage, or what we're doing not making music or not engaging in that part of it. Like, I feel like the four of us, I'm in touch with all those guys all the time. I mean, Joe's here now. Like, he's actually working with me here at the house, and I think that people's sense of the band, like, it wasn't that we were overwhelmed by our popularity or anything like that. In fact, it was just that there was time for us to do other things that didn't involve, being on the tour for 3 or 4 months out of the year. But having said that, it's no question that one of the more daunting aspects of thinking about playing again is just how insane the music business has become. And just I never liked it. I didn't like doing the music business. We did it because we had to. The dealing with the clubs and all that stuff was, it was a lot of work. And it wasn't saying, I come out of a punk background. In my mind, I'm more interested in gigs that are in basements than I am in giant theaters. So there was an element of it where I would just, we did it because we had to do it. But it doesn't mean that we're it didn't mean like we were doing it and we're like, oh, we can't handle this anymore, we give up. There was no surrender. That's all. There was never a surrender. And in terms of the door price and all that stuff, it wasn't like we were insisting on a $5 door everywhere we went. What we were trying to do was we were trying to bring a real economy to the equation, because the way ticket prices are set now are based on it's not real. It's just what the ticket prices you see today are largely evidence of a broad spectrum of greed. Everybody wanting a bigger piece of the pie. But the way we approached our shows is by we would set an ideal ticket price we thought was fair, which is basically, we think, something that is equivalent to what people would pay to see a movie. The way we figure, people will pay now, for instance, they're paying $10 to $12 to see a light on a wall. They could pay that much to see human beings who've driven all day to play music, right? Seems pretty fair to me, So back then, ticket prices, movies were $5 or $6 or whatever it was. So that's what we were shooting. That's what we kind of shot for. And then by using that as sort of a baseline, then we would break down the economics of the actual gig. And we found out that you can cut so much stuff out that you can make it efficient. I mean, we all own houses, so it wasn't impossible, right? We did our work. It's just a different way of approaching things. It's a creative response to a vexing industry.
So now that there's starting to be more legislator kind of cracking down on ticket scalpers, do you think that that's kind of a step closer to kind of having a kind of the scene that you were looking to have when you set out to make Fugazi? Do you think that makes it easier for people to kind of live in the way, or kind of operate in the way that you were just describing? I feel like that I don't know anything about what legislation you're talking about, or I think it was just in New York, but it was.
Right,
I
guess I feel like, generally speaking, shows in which ticket scalpers are really operative are not really the shows I'm talking about.
Okay.
Like the shows I'm talking about, the shows that I kind of feel most at home with, there's no scalpers. They're just people making music for a community. It's not about, we're not talking about hot tickets shows that people all want to get into.
Yeah, but you have expressed that I guess one of the problems with the kind of prospect of Fugazi playing again is that, like, you would have those ticket scalpers and you would have tickets to a Fugazi show going for $100, which is just kind of like,
right,
I don't know, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Honestly, I don't mean to be coy about it. When I say those things, it's not as if like that's what's blocking us. Like, they can't figure out how to deal with the business part of it. That's not the issue. The issue is that it's just not what we're doing now. We may or may not in the future decide. The four of us decide to play music, we will, and that's just, or we won't. But if we decide that we want to do something, I can almost guarantee you that we will sit down and really do our homework and come up with ways to navigate this ridiculous music business. We'll figure it out, like but there's no reason in me, like I don't need to really sit down and bang my head against the wall unless we're actually going to do it. Right? I'm more interested, like for instance, the Evens, Amy and I, like the way we were going around was, that was the challenge. That was what I'm thinking about. Like, and now, like I'm just thinking about, like, can we get this new thing going? Are we going to have it? Like, are we going to finish these songs? I'm only doing the work that's in front of me. And if this thing we're working on now starts gigging, then like we have ideas about the kind of places we want to play and the places we don't want to play. And so then that'll be our focus. If in the future, at some point, Brennan and Guy and Joe and I decide to do something, then I'll turn my attention to that. But there's no point in me trying to solve the riddle of what it would take to get Fugazi back on stage until the Fugazi people all want to be back on stage. That's all. It's a consensus. So it's not. I don't want to give the sense that.
Yeah.
That it's
if this happens, then Fugazi will like immediately be back on stage. I get
if
that.
we decide to do it, we'll figure it out. And if we don't, then that's fine too. It doesn't matter. I'll be in Fugazi till the day I die. I'm not worried about.
Technically, it's still a band. Yeah. I've got a few more questions. First off, this was actually from somebody who donated to help the show. So this isn't my own question, but I'm relaying it to you. Do you feel that today's punk scene is a natural evolution of the scene you are a part of, or has the modern punk community evolved to become what you are trying to create a refuge from?
I would have to get the person who asked the question to define what that person is referring to. I have seen clear examples of both. There are things. I've met kids who identify as punk or hardcore now, who may be making music that I'm not like doesn't necessarily speak to me, but who I think are really cool kids who are trying to do the right thing in their own lives. They're trying to make a community for themselves, and I think that's great. I've also met people who identify as punk or hardcore who are just kind of doing like some weird version of like they're careerists. They're just thinking about like how to make money, and this is they're like and that does not that I actually I do find a lot of the so-called alternative bands. I mean, there's so much emphasis on the industry structure, like with agents and promotional people. I don't relate to that stuff because to me that was sort of the bad part of the rock business. But that's what I know. A lot of people who are in really cool bands that just spend a lot of energy trying to figure out how to get how to play that game or how to do that work. So I don't really feel. To me, that's exactly what I was trying to get away from. But it doesn't mean that I think they're doing things wrong. It just means that's what I was trying to get away from, and I find it a little bit trying when I'm like hearing about the situations. So I would say that by and large, I think people who are genuinely underground, like not that punk scene. I think that regardless of whether or not it's music or attitude that I necessarily can relate to, Of course, it's a natural, it's an extension of the community I was a part of, and the community of which I was a descendant of. It's not like we didn't create this; we're just part of it. It's a lineage that goes back, it predates civilization. I mean, don't forget, in my opinion, music is a form of communication that predates language. So I feel like the essence of music is always going to be as a gathering point, and something that brings some, maybe inspires or encourages people in one form or another, and is central to like sort of communities and tribes. That's always been the case. It gets confused because the music industry wants it to be a consumable. It's a product, and so it gets confusing because people think, oh, that's what the point of it is. But actually, I think that people who really respond to music, it's not the product they're interested in. It's what is happening, what music does. Because what music is really, if you think about it, it's a human being's ability to assemble, take sounds and assemble them in a way that provoke emotional response. It's incredible. It's an incredible phenomenon, and I think that people. I think it helps us remember that we are connected. So from my point of view, that has always been the case. I inherited it. It was not something. It was not a gift I created. I like to think that it was a gift I inherited, and that I did, and I continue to try to take care of that gift to make sure that it continues to provide. I can continue to hand it off to other people who are doing the same thing. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna real quick before we wrap up. I want to take a kind of hard turn into politics because you're kind of really at the center of the political landscape. Are you going to be attending the inauguration a week from today?
Am I what?
Are you going to be attending the inauguration a week from today?
I never go to inaugurations.
Okay.
I live here.
I was going to ask if you went.
I'll go down to the march the next day probably. The big march, which I like to think of it as not a counter-inaugural or an anti-Bush march, anti-Trump march, but rather I like to think of it as it's a demonstration of the sort of the conscious ballast of this country, that there's this enormous this. I would think actually the majority of the people who live in this country give a damn, and while all the kind of insanity and ugliness and unpleasantness that is sort of attends politics in general, it's especially on display this time around. And I like to think that with the march on the 21st is really just to remind everybody there's also this huge part of the population who needs to be remembered while politicians are fighting each other and going through their power stuff, which is going to cause a lot of, I think, discomfort for people, like what the politicians are doing. So I'm not, but I don't ever go to the inauguration. It's just, they call it pomp and circumstance for it's like it's just not interesting to me. It's also, if you live in Washington D.C., which I've lived here my entire life, you become really accustomed to this sort of notion that you just get like new bosses. They just come in every 4 years, and the people like the right, the Republican Party, love changing laws here in D.C. against the people who we had pretty strict gun control in this city, and the Republican Party, using the court, forced us to lose that gun control, even though everybody in the city, by far the majority of the people in the city, voted to have it. But we were stripped of it because the Republican Party likes to play with us, like a cat likes to play with a ball or something, So we're somewhat accustomed to having unwanted guests, and I think that we'll just have to figure out how to navigate it. I understand people's fear the incoming administration. I do think that a lot of that fear is a result of, I think, irresponsible journalism, because everyone for months and months and months saying like if Donald Trump is elected, it'll be the end of the world, because they're just being derisive, and then so at some point people really believe that. So now that this has come to pass, now everyone's freaking out because they've been reading this thing over and over and over and over. I don't think it'll be the end of the world. I think there'll be some discomfort and some. I mean, already it's such ridiculousness going on. But we're going to get through it. We'll get through it. It's just, I think that the real issue right now is we have 2 years to figure out how to vote the Republicans out of power of the houses, and that's the job right now, to try to counterbalance the situation. But whatever, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I'm with the birds and the trees before I'm with the politicians. And the birds and the trees, honestly, well, I would say they don't give an F. They're just not. They were here before and they'll be here afterwards. So this kind of stuff is, I think that people should be politically active and they should be aware. But if it's just making you miserable or terrified, then that's not very productive.
Yeah. You once said, America is just a word, and what it actually means is left to each person to figure out for themselves. What does it mean to you, I guess? What does America mean to you?
I think in my mind, well, of course, it's imaginary. America is largely, it's the result of a fictional line, imaginary, invisible line drawn around a geographic place that, and by lassoing these people, it's kind of created a culture. But the America that I feel connected to is not one that is set apart from the rest of the world, but it's rather the sort of the flavor of the human population that happens to be on this particular continent. I like to think that we're connected to all the other continents. I don't believe in American exceptionalism whatsoever. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think America's number one. I think all that stuff is just absurd. It's completely absurd. I think that America is where I woke up, and there is some really beautiful things about this culture. There's incredible, there's incredible energy and incredible creativity. I love the kind of the culture that I feel connected to, but that's because I'm connected to it. And I think that. I don't think it's better than other countries. I don't think like that. I mean, people used to say, God, you must really love Washington because you've been there your whole life and you must think it's the greatest city. But I don't think that. I just think it's where I am. So take care. This is this. If this where you are, then if it's if it can work. If one doesn't need to escape, and I know there's certainly places in the world where you're I have to get away from here because I can't. It's too suffocating. But if it's not, then if wherever you are, even if you're in a place that's suffocating, do your best to make it healthy. Be well, do well. That just seems like such an obvious thing. So I feel really centered here in Washington because that's where my family is. But I've been fortunate to go travel around the world, and I go to other places and I think, wow, this is amazing. Human beings are incredible. The world's amazing, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And the part that I happen to be, the part of it that I am happens to be called America.
Well, thank you for taking up part of your very busy life to talk to me today, Ian. I've just got one more question. I just like asking this question because I think it's a fun question to whoever I may interview. And not this exact question, but a variation on it. But what is your favorite Fugazi album? And explain as much as you would like.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's basically two. I mean, all the records, of course, they all, of course, you love all your children. So it's not really like you can't really. Each one has different aspects. I would say that the record that I'm the most comfortable listening to is probably the instrument soundtrack. And the reason for that is that the instrument soundtrack is a collection of recordings that were not recorded with the intent of being heard of public exposure. They were demos. So the way we were playing is really relaxed. It's the way, and Fugazi, we played a lot of shows, and we did some time in the studio, but we really spent a lot of time practicing. And when we were really working, we would practice 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours a day for 4 or 5 days a week. We just loved playing together. We just sit and play, and that experience of getting together and playing music together was really important and profound. And so the recordings that are on the instrument soundtrack a lot of those are just very informal. They were just recordings of us practicing that we had kind of created. We have hours of stuff like that. But when we did the movie, we needed to come up with some ideas for soundtrack. We said, we have this stuff already. We never ever thought that we were going to release it or make it public. But in some ways, that music is the stuff that's on there is just reminds me of practicing, which I like. I think our last record, Argument's pretty realized, pretty darn good record, that one, But I think that's when starting in Red Medicine, we really started to get our mind around recording in the studio with how we can bring, the way we engage with live performance. I think we really kind of, we became close to mastering that early on. Like, we just loved playing, and we really got into that. But recording took us a long time to understand how to approach recording in a way that would bring the same kind of we were able to bring the same kind of vision, or so the way we approach playing live. We just recording, we were just trying to document our live shows. We'd go in the studio and just play live and record it. But it wasn't until later that we started about how we could use a studio in different ways. And Red Medicine was the first time we really started to get into it. But I think the last record, the Argument record, I really felt like, it was really like, I felt like it was, accomplished. I like that record. But having said that, I don't listen to any of them. So that's like, each record has a story. But I remember when we finished the Argument, we were in the studio for a couple of weeks probably, and it was such a satisfying experience. I remember as soon as we got out, I said to those guys, let's just book. Like, I looked at the calendar and I saw that Inner Ear, he wasn't booked for a couple more weeks. I was like, let's just book it out and let's just write another record right now. Like, this is, and they're like, you're crazy. We didn't have any songs, but I thought, let's just do it because it was so enjoyable being in the studio. I love being in the studio because it's like being on a submarine or something. You just, it says you and the rest, the band and the engineer, and you just so focused, and it's all you're doing, and I love that.
Yeah, well, thank you for talking with me today, and yeah, thank you for everything you have. What?
Oh, sorry, you're gonna edit? So you're gonna edit this?
Yeah. I'll probably post it somewhere in full, but I'll just edit it down a bit for like radio purposes, to keep it concise. But I will keep the full version.
Just send me a link so I can check out what you came up with.
Yeah, sure thing.
Cool, man. And thanks for patience and getting it organized.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
And if you know the guys in Gloss, tell them make another band.
Yeah, I will.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Somewhere in these private minds, the last one comes just in time to clear out the chambers, show up the lips. That's the price to pay for hoping every slip's not a slide. chambers, sew up the lips, the press to pay, hoping every slip's not a slide.